In this lesson, we're going to learn about the copy, cut, and paste functions, the differences between them, and how to properly use these functions when you're performing financial modeling. So first, the copy function, as you all know, if you simply press Control-C and then Control-V, what it does is it actually copies the exact same cell to the pasted cell. So it not only copies the data inputs itself, but also the formattings as well. So if you, for example, copy this and paste it here, it also copies the formatting like borderlines or indents, data formattings, and so on. But that only applies to hard-coded numbers, which in this case, the numbers are hard-coded with a specific number. So the results look like this. However, let's say that if we have a formula created, and if we have created a link between each other, now what it does is if we copy the cells and paste it elsewhere, when this is a link, it doesn't actually replicate the exact same numbers. Rather, it copies the formulas around and the reference cells shift around as your formulas move to the right. Of course, like the case before, if you only want to copy the numbers itself, there is a function called value paste. So we're going to learn it in our next lesson in paste special. We're going to learn about value paste, but usually the simple copy and paste function will work like this. So again, it applies the same when you're copying your formulas to the bottom as well. So if you copy it to the bottom, Control-C, Control-V, and what it does is, well, it does copy the formats. That's one problem with this exercise. But anyways, what you can see is it moves down to the next reference cell. So that is the original copy function of Microsoft Excel. And next, let's say that instead of copying these formulas, let's say that we have cut these formulas by using Control-X. And let's say that you paste it below. And this time, what happens is it refers to the original cells that was referring to. And this applies even when you cut it and paste it elsewhere. It's still going to refer to the original cells. So it's not going to change the cells that you refer to. But if you do the same with copy and paste, it's going to create a completely different result. For example, if you copy it and then paste it here, what's going to happen is it's going to refer to these cells that you see up here. So that is the difference between the copy function and the cut function. Next, we have another very important function that we will use frequently. So it's pretty much the same with the copy function, but instead of using Control-C and Control-V, what you want to do is if you want to copy something across, you can always use the Control-R button. The R is for right. The Control-R is exactly the same as Control-C and Control-V, but it's much more convenient as you only have to press the buttons just once instead of twice. And similarly, when you're copying things downwards, you can use the Control-D function, and that's short for Control down, and it will instantly copy your data downwards very efficiently. And sadly though, Microsoft Excel only has shortcuts to copy stuff to the right or to the bottom. It does not have a specific key to copy to the left or copy upwards. So in those cases, if you want to copy your formulas to the left or to the above, you would have to use the manual Control-C and Control-V function. But you rarely use those functions to go left and to go upwards when you're doing financial modeling. So Control-R and Control-D, in my opinion, is sufficient enough. And for some of you who want to format these entire data sets, we are going to learn how to paste formats in our next lesson. So stay tuned for that, for those of you who wondered how to format these cells. Our last part will concern copying and pasting the entire rows. So let's say that we want to switch these two rows. So we want to switch interest income and interest expense. What you want to do is you select the entire row by using the shift key and the space key, and we're going to use the cut function. So we have cut the entire row, and we're going to go down here and then press the Control key and the plus key simultaneously, and it's going to instantly insert your selected row in between these two lines. Same for copying the entire row. So if you have copied the entire row of interest income, if you perform a Control plus key, it's going to insert a new row in between those two and create a copy of the interest income rows. And some people confuse this function with Control-C, and if you press Control-V instead of Control plus key, what it does is it overwrites over the existing data. So now we don't have interest expenses no longer. So that creates a very big difference. So whether to use the Control plus key or the Control V key to overwrite the existing data, that depends on the situation. But usually rather than pasting over the existing cells, we would ordinarily use the Control plus keys to insert new rows into your financial models. One last thing to note is that when you're functioning and attempting to copy the entire rows or cutting the entire rows, and when you're pasting or whether you're using the Control plus key, whatever you do, you must be on the A column in order for that function to work. If you do it elsewhere in other columns, like for example in this case we are selecting column C, if you press the Control plus button, it will automatically create a warning sign that this simply does not work. Always after copying or after cutting, you have to be on this column in order for your function to work. That is it. In this lesson, we've learned about the copy and cut functions and the paste functions. We've learned the Control-R keys and Control-D keys to fill right and to fill down. Also, we've learned to copy the entire rows and paste it elsewhere by using the Control plus keys and the Control V key.